A Toyota Tacoma owner once thought his truck was invincible, until the frame literally started rotting underneath him. Why? Because the protective coating wasn't applied right, and rust ate the steel from the inside out. That one mistake led Toyota to replace thousands of frames. But here's the lesson for you. Protecting a car's coating correctly could mean the difference between decades of safe driving and a repair bill that breaks the bank. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Did you know rust can destroy a car's frame before you even notice it on the surface? Most people think of rust as those brown flakes on a fender or a bubble forming beneath the paint. But what's happening underneath is far worse. Rust is not just a cosmetic issue, it's a chemical process. When bare steel comes in contact with oxygen and moisture, it begins to oxidize. Layer by layer, the metal changes into brittle iron oxide. What makes this dangerous is that the transformation doesn't stop at the surface. Once it begins, it spreads inward, eating away at the structure of the car that you depend on to keep you safe. Think of it this way. If paint chips off your hood, you'll see the blemish right away. But if salty water creeps inside a welded seam on your frame, you'll never know the damage is happening out of sight. That's how rust traps so many car owners. They ignore it until it becomes visible. But by the time spots appear outside, the inside is already weakened, and in some cases, beyond saving. A small hole can mean a suspension mount no longer has the strength to hold, and repairs that once cost a few $100s suddenly climb into the thousands. Rust works slowly, almost like a cancer for your car. On the outside, the surface might look fine. Meanwhile, the reaction beneath the paint keeps spreading, taking advantage of every tiny crack, chip, or scratch. As soon as the coating fails in one spot, water, oxygen, and, worst of all, road salt sneak inside. Salt is the real accelerant here, because it doesn't just make steel rust faster. It allows moisture to stick to metal, keeping the reaction active long after the snow melts. That's why a car parked overnight with a salty undercarriage can corrode even when the streets are dry the next day. Geography plays a huge role in how severe the problem gets. Drivers in northern states face a constant battle because roads are coated with salt every winter. Each slush-covered drive blasts salt water into the underbody where it lingers for months. On the other hand, people in coastal towns deal with salty sea air corroding exposed bolts and panels all year long. And even if you live further inland where salt isn't common, clogged drains and doors or wheel wells can trap rainwater, starting the same hidden breakdown inside your vehicle's structure. One of the clearest examples of how devastating this can be was the scandal involving Toyota Tacoma trucks. Owners believed their frames were well protected because the paint above looked fine. What they didn't know was that the factory-applied coating underneath wasn't holding up. Entire frames were rotting away, while the body panel still looked intact. Toyota ended up replacing thousands of frames, proving how rust doesn't announce itself until failure is already severe. The crucial point is this: protection only works while the barrier remains unbroken. Paint, coatings, sealers, they're only as good as their smallest weak point. Once a stone chip penetrates, or a protective layer cracks, the vulnerable steel is left exposed, and that one breach can allow corrosion to creep silently through stronger areas until the whole section gives out. Rust-related failures have cost manufacturers and owners millions of dollars, and the frustrating part is how easily much of it could have been avoided. But here's the upside. While untreated rust spreads quietly, the right habits can stop it before it ever starts. In fact, there's a simple system you can follow each season that takes away most of the risk, and it doesn't involve expensive shop visits or complicated repairs. What if avoiding rust repairs didn't require constant shop visits or expensive treatments, but instead just a simple seasonal routine you could handle yourself? For most drivers, that idea sounds almost too easy. And yet, the truth is rust prevention has less to do with complicated procedures and more to do with keeping barriers intact before damage begins. Every car sold today leaves the factory with coatings designed to protect the steel underneath. The clear coat, the paint, and the primer beneath form a tight shell that keeps oxygen and water from reaching the metal. But coatings break down in ways people often overlook. A rock chip on the highway, a scratch from a key, or even a patch of road salt stuck underneath can open just enough of a gap for corrosion to begin. Once that gap forms, paint alone isn't enough protection anymore. You need to maintain the armor, not just assume it's unbreakable. A lot of drivers fall into the trap of believing their vehicle's factory paint means they're covered for life. In reality, evidence shows even small nicks or abrasions let moisture creep directly into seams, and seams are where rust usually takes root first. The spot you ignore on your hood today turns into bubbling paint tomorrow, and by the time you notice it has reached the sheet metal, you're already losing money. Prevention, then, comes down to being deliberate with upkeep instead of waiting until flaws become visible. One of the biggest game changers is washing your vehicle consistently, especially during the winter. In regions where snowmobilers and trucks salt highways, salty slush clings to every surface underneath your car. Removing that buildup quickly makes a huge difference. Owners in the Midwest who go through a car wash once a week when roads are salted not only see cleaner vehicles, but significantly less frame rust compared to neighbors who don't. It also isn't just about looks. Those washes remove the corrosive layer before it lingers long enough to attack. Another smart step is applying a high-quality wax each season. The wax layer provides flexibility on top of the paint and protects the clear coat from drying or cracking over time. Without wax, paint loses elasticity, and as the temperature changes, tiny splits can open across the car's body. With wax refreshed, the clear coat keeps stretching and moving without exposing the steel beneath. Pairing this with direct attention to scratches, touching them up before winter hits, strengthens your defenses dramatically. Beyond these steps, different forms of rust proofing add even more protection. Professional shops often provide oil spray applications. These treatments seep into seams, cracks, and spot welds, forming a lingering barrier that pushes back moisture. They usually need refreshing every year or two, with costs running around $100 to $150 per application. On the other side, tar-based sealers create a thicker, more permanent coat underneath. While they can last several years, they also have drawbacks, like cracking if applied poorly and making future repairs harder. For most daily drivers, combining seasonal washes, wax, and an annual oil spray forms a practical balance of cost and protection. Undercarriage spraying matters most in regions where rocks, gravel, and salt chunks constantly strike the unfinished underside of your car. With debris hitting exposed steel on every drive, the underbody is usually where rust eats through first. Protecting this area not only keeps the structure strong, but also extends the lifespan of brake lines, suspension bolts, and fuel systems mounted below. Neglecting the undercarriage is one of the main reasons vehicles in northern climates lose value so quickly. Here's where the math surprises most people. Spending $100 to $200 for maintenance in a year feels unnecessary until you remember a single body panel replacement often costs several $1,000s. Full frame repairs are even higher, especially if corrosion has already spread into suspension mounts or critical weld points. Preventive maintenance pays for itself many times over, not in small savings, but in avoiding catastrophic bills. Rust isn't something you have to accept. It's the direct result of neglecting simple routines. Keeping coatings intact through seasonal wax, undercarriage washes, and quick scratch repairs makes the difference between prevention now or massive repairs later. Your car will only last as long as the protection around it, and those layers depend on you maintaining them. Start small. Schedule washes after every salt-covered drive, apply wax before temperature shifts, and never leave bare metal exposed. If a major manufacturer can lose billions over rust, imagine the lifetime savings you secure by keeping corrosion from touching your vehicle at all.